The most feared boy in school ignored every girl for years, until the new transfer student sat in his seat. Rain fell heavily across Seoul as luxury cars lined up outside Hanrim High School. Students immediately rushed toward the windows, because the four kings had arrived. The richest boys in school, untouchable, feared. Every girl in school was obsessed with them, and leading them was Tae-Jun, cold eyes, perfect face, walking scandal. Rumor said he once got suspended for beating up a student who spread fake rumors about his friend. Beside him were his closest friends, Seo Jun-ho, playful, flirtatious, dangerously charming. Lee Hyun-seok, quiet, intelligent, heir to Korea's biggest tech company, and Park Tae-yang, athlete, fighter, troublemaker. The four boys walked through the hallway, while students instantly moved aside. Jun-ho smirked. Look at them acting scared again, near the back window. Her name was Yoo Ji-yeon. Simple uniform, old backpack, no makeup, no designer shoes. She looked completely different from the wealthy students around her. The girls nearby whispered mockingly. Did she transfer from the countryside? Why does her uniform look so cheap? Ji-yeon quietly ignored them and continued reading her book. Then suddenly, the classroom door slid open. The four kings entered. The entire class instantly became silent. Girls fixed their hair. Some secretly took pictures. But Yoon-woo didn't even look at them. He walked lazily toward the back of the classroom, with his friends behind him. Then he stopped. Someone was sitting in his seat. The atmosphere changed immediately. One girl whispered nervously, "She's finished." Even the teacher looked panicked. Jun leaned closer to Yoon-woo and smirked. "Should we pray for the new girl?" Tae-yang chuckled. She lasted one day, but Ji-yeon didn't even realize. She kept reading quietly. Yoon-woo stared at her silently. Unreadable, cold. Then Ji-yeon slowly looked up. Their eyes met. For the first time that morning, Yoon-woo removed his AirPods. The classroom froze. The teacher hurried over nervously. Ji-yeon, that seat belongs to. Before he could finish, Ji-yeon stood up politely and bowed. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." Everyone waited for Yoon-woo to explode. Instead, he pulled the chair beside him out slowly and said calmly, "Sit there." The classroom went dead silent. Even his friends looked shocked. Hyun-seok adjusted his glasses. Interesting, because Chae-Yoon-woo had never willingly sat beside a girl before. But the real shock came seconds later. A female student suddenly walked forward angrily. "Yoon-woo, why are you treating her differently?" The classroom became tense. Yoon-woo slowly looked up at her, his eyes cold enough to freeze the room. Then he said, "Touch her once." He glanced at his friends, and Ho smirked immediately. Tae-yang cracked his knuckles. Everyone thought the school prince protected the new girl, but they had no idea she just walked into his trap. The classroom remained completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed properly, because Yoo Ji-yeon was still sitting beside Kang Tae-Jun, in his chair area. The chair nobody had touched for 2 years. Not after what happened to the last student. Ji-yeon could feel dozens of eyes staring at her, some shocked, some jealous, some almost pitying her. Beside her, Tae-Jun leaned lazily against his chair, one hand resting against his cheek while spinning a black pen slowly between his fingers. Calm, the rich girl standing in front of him clenched her fists. "Tae-Jun, you're..." Tae-Jun finally looked up slowly. His cold eyes made her step back immediately. But then, something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not warmly, not kindly. A dangerous smile. Seo Jun-ho immediately stopped laughing. Even Park Tae-yang raised an eyebrow, because Kang Tae-Jun almost never smiled, and whenever he did, someone suffered. Tae-Jun leaned closer toward you slightly. close enough for her to smell the faint expensive cologne on his uniform. Then he spoke softly. "Do you know why nobody sits there?" Ji-yeon looked confused. The classroom became even quieter. Tae-Jun tapped the black desk slowly with his fingers. Tap. Then he said, "Because I built it myself." Ji-yeon blinked. The entire class stared nervously. Tae-Jun's father owned Hanrim High School. And 2 years ago, Tae-Jun had redesigned the entire back section of the classroom himself, including that seat. That space belonged to him alone. Nobody touched it. Nobody even placed their bags there. Rumor said a student once sat there as a joke and got expelled the next day. Ji-yeon slowly tried to stand up nervously. I'm sorry, I didn't know." But Tae-Jun suddenly grabbed the back of her chair casually before she could move. The entire classroom froze. His fingers rested lazily on the chair behind her. Yet somehow it felt controlling, possessive, dangerous. Tae-Jun tilted his head slightly while staring at her. "I didn't say you could leave." Several girls immediately looked jealous. One almost looked ready to cry. Seo Junho suddenly laughed quietly under his breath. "She's really finished now." Ji-yeon looked confused. "What do you mean?" Junho smirked. Tae-Jun only keeps things he finds interesting. The room became tense again, because everyone knew what that meant. Tae-Jun got bored easily. And when he got bored, people disappeared from his life instantly. Ji-yeon slowly looked toward Tae-Jun again. For the first time, she noticed something strange. Behind his expression, he looked angry. Not at her, at something else. Or someone else. Then suddenly, the classroom door opened violently. A tall student walked in with blood on his lip. And the moment he saw Ji-yeon sitting beside Tae-Jun, his face turned pale. He pointed at her immediately and shouted, "You need to get away from him." The whole classroom panicked when Min-gyu shouted, "You don't know what he does to people." The classroom became completely silent after Min-gyu's warning. Rain hit the classroom windows heavily. Nobody moved. Nobody even looked at Kang Tae-Jun directly anymore. Jian stood beside her desk frozen. Her chest tightened nervously. Because nobody denied Min-gyu's words. Not the students. Not Tae-Jun's friends. Not even Tae-Jun himself. Min-gyu pointed toward Tae-Jun again with shaking hands. Blood remained visible on his lower lip. "Tell her I'm lying then." The atmosphere instantly became tense. Tae-Jun stood calmly near the back window, one hand inside his pocket, cold, unreadable expression, like none of this affected him. But Jian noticed something. His jaw tightened slightly. Min-gyu laughed bitterly. "See." He looked desperately toward Jian. "You have no idea what kind of person he really is." Park Tae-yang slowly stood up from his seat, cracking his fingers once. Seo Jun stopped smiling. Even Hyun Seok's expression changed. The classroom suddenly felt uncomfortable, heavy. Then suddenly, Tae-Jun moved. Fast, before anyone could react. He grabbed Min-gyu by the collar and pushed him hard against the wall. "Banji!" Girls screamed softly. Several students jumped backward. Min-gyu struggled immediately. But Tae-Jun held him there easily with one hand. Calm expression. Steady breathing. Cold eyes. Tae-Jun leaned closer slightly. "You came back just to do this?" Min-gyu suddenly punched him across the face. The classroom gasped loudly. Jian's eyes widened in. The whispers became louder. Students stared openly now. Some looked curious. Others looked amused. But most looked at her like she had made a huge mistake. Jian quickly realized one thing. Being noticed by Kang Tae-Jun was not a good thing at Hanrim High. So she started avoiding everyone. She stopped speaking during class. Avoided looking toward Tae-Jun's side completely. Ignored Seo Jun, whose teasing smiles. Avoided Tae-Yang in the hallways. And every time Hanseong looked at her quietly, she immediately lowered her eyes. Even lunch became difficult. The cafeteria buzzed loudly, with wealthy students laughing and filming videos together. Luxury watches, designer bags, perfect uniforms. Ji-Yan felt completely out of place. So instead of sitting near people, she chose the farthest corner of the cafeteria alone, quietly eating simple kimbap from home while keeping her head down. For the first time that day, the noise around her faded slightly. Peace. But then, the cafeteria slowly became quiet. Ji-Yan immediately felt it. That strange shift in atmosphere. Students suddenly began whispering again. Several girls straightened their posture quickly. And then she saw her, Kim Ha-yeon, walking elegantly through the cafeteria with her friends beside her. Perfect hair, luxury, customized uniform, cold, graceful expression. Everyone watched her. Some students even moved their chairs out of the way automatically. Ji-Yan quickly lowered her eyes, hoping Ha-yeon would walk past her. But the footsteps stopped directly beside her table. Silence. Ji-Yan slowly looked up nervously. Ha-yeon smiled softly. Fake soft. You really like causing attention, don't you? Several nearby students quietly pulled out their phones beneath the tables. Watching. Waiting. Ji-Yan lowered her eyes again. I'm just eating. Ha-yeon slowly looked down at Ji-Yan's homemade lunch, then laughed quietly with her friends. Cute. One girl, Ha-yeon, covered her mouth while laughing. Another whispered loudly enough for Ji-Yan to hear. Did she bring food from home? The girls laughed again. Ji-Yan gripped her chopsticks tighter silently, trying to ignore them, trying not to react. But Ha-yeon suddenly grabbed Ji-Yan's juice calmly and examined it, then placed it back down carelessly. Do you know what people are saying about you now? Ji-Yan stayed quiet. Ha-yeon leaned slightly closer. They think Tae-Jun likes you. The entire cafeteria watched silently now. Ji-Yan's heartbeat sped up nervously. That's not true. Ha-yeon's smile disappeared instantly. Cold eyes, sharp eyes. Then stay away from him. Ji-Yan looked confused. I already do. Ha-yeon laughed softly, but this time the laughter sounded annoyed. Not enough. Then suddenly, she grabbed Ji-Yan's lunch tray and pushed it aside across the table roughly. The juice spilled instantly. Several students gasped quietly. Ji-Yan stood up immediately in shock. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Ha-yeon stared at her calmly. This table is for Hanrim students. The cafeteria became completely silent. Ji-Yan's face slowly burned with embarrassment. Everyone was watching, recording, whispering. One of Ha-yeon's friends smirked. Maybe she forgot where she came from. The girls laughed quietly again. Ji-Yan looked around the cafeteria helplessly. Nobody defended her. Nobody moved. Even worse, some students looked entertained. Ha-yeon adjusted her blazer elegantly, then pointed toward the cafeteria exit. Go eat somewhere else. Ji-Yan's eyes watered slightly, but she refused to cry there. Not in front of everyone. So quietly, she picked up her spilled lunch tray with trembling hands, lowered her head, and walked away while the entire cafeteria watched her silently. But near the cafeteria entrance, someone suddenly blocked her path. Tall figure, loosened tie. Cold eyes, Kang Tae-Jun, and the moment Ha-yeon saw him standing there, her confident expression disappeared instantly. The cafeteria froze the moment Tae-Jun blocked Ji-Yan's path. Ji-Yan stood frozen near the cafeteria exit, lunch tray trembling slightly in her hands, and directly in front of her, Kang Tae-Jun, tall, calm, one hand inside his pocket like always. The entire cafeteria had gone silent. Even Ha-yeon's friends stopped smiling. Ji-Yan quickly lowered her eyes. Move. Her voice came out quieter than she expected. But Tae-Jun didn't move. Instead, his eyes slowly dropped toward the spilled juice on her tray. then toward her trembling hands. The atmosphere suddenly felt uncomfortable, heavy. Behind them, whispers spread quickly across the cafeteria. He came for her. Why is he involved again? Tae-Jun looks upset. Seo Jun-ho leaned casually against a nearby vending machine, watching everything with amusement. Park Tae-yang sat lazily on top of a cafeteria table, spinning a basketball with one hand. Even Hyun-sok had quietly appeared near the entrance. The four kings were all there now. And that only made everyone more nervous. Jian tried walking around Tae-Jun, but suddenly, he grabbed the edge of her lunch tray, gently before it tilted again. Jian stopped instantly. Her heartbeat sped up. Tae-Jun looked down at the tray calmly, then said quietly, "You should hold it properly." Several students gasped softly, because his voice didn't sound cold this time. It sounded careful. Ha-yeon noticed too, and her expression hardened immediately. She walked forward elegantly, slowly, confidently, until she stood directly beside Tae-Jun. "You're embarrassing her." Her tone sounded sweet, but Jian could feel the tension underneath it. Tae-Jun finally looked at Ha-yeon. Unreadable expression. Ha-yeon crossed her arms lightly. Everyone's staring. Tae-Jun glanced around the cafeteria once. Students instantly looked away nervously. Seo Jun-ho nearly laughed. Then Tae-Jun replied calmly, "Then they should stop staring." The cafeteria became silent again. Jian looked up at him in shock. Even Ha-yeon's smile almost disappeared for a second. Nobody expected him to say that publicly. Ha-yeon laughed softly, trying to hide her irritation. "Since when do you care about people?" Tae-Jun stayed silent briefly. Then his eyes moved toward Jian again. That small movement alone made the entire cafeteria tense. Jian felt her chest tighten nervously. Why was he looking at her like that? Ha-yeon noticed too. And this time, her jealousy became obvious. She stepped closer toward Jian. "Do you enjoy this attention?" Jian immediately shook her head. "No." "Then stop creating problems." Jian gripped her tray tighter. Embarrassed, confused, frustrated. For the first time, she looked directly at Ha-yeon instead of lowering her eyes. "I didn't do anything." The cafeteria gasped quietly. Even Seo Jun-ho raised his eyebrows. Because Yu Jian had finally answered back. Ha-yeon's expression became cold instantly. But before respond, Tae-Jun suddenly took Jian's lunch tray from her hands. The entire cafeteria froze. Completely froze. Kang Tae-Jun was holding someone else's lunch tray. Jian stared at him in disbelief. So did everyone else. Then Tae-Jun calmly looked toward Jian and said, "Sit down and eat properly." And somehow, that simple sentence made the entire cafeteria even more shocked than the argument itself. Jian thought avoiding Tae-Jun was finally possible until the professor called their names together. 2 days after the cafeteria incident, Yu Jian finally thought things were calming down. The whispers around campus became quieter. Students still stared sometimes. At least nobody openly bothered her anymore. So for the first time since arriving at Hanseong High School, she relaxed slightly. Big mistake. Because the moment she entered the media hall that morning, something already felt strange. The classroom buzzed loudly with excitement. Students gathered around discussing something enthusiastically. Large banners covered the walls. Hanseong Creative Film Competition. Jian stopped walking immediately. The annual competition, the biggest event on campus. Winning students received internship opportunities, sponsorship deals, social media exposure, industry recommendations. Everyone wanted it. Especially wealthy influencer students like Ha-yeon and her friends. The professor entered confidently. Instant silence. This year's competition will be done in teams. The room immediately exploded with excitement. Jian quietly sat near the back, hoping nobody would notice her. But then, the professor continued. And unlike previous years, I will personally choose the groups. The excitement instantly became nervous tension. Students exchanged worried looks, because nobody trusted the professor's choices. The professor began reading names calmly. Popular students grouped together. Friends placed together. Influencer teams formed quickly. Then, suddenly, Kang Tae-Jun. The room became attentive immediately. Of course, everyone wanted Tae-Jun's team. His family connections alone could guarantee success. Girls immediately sat straighter. Even Hyeon smiled confidently. Then the professor continued. Jian. Silence. Complete silence. Jian slowly looked up in shock. The classroom froze. Several students looked genuinely confused. Seo Jun-ho nearly dropped his pen laughing. Park Tae-yang slapped the table loudly. Even Hyun-sok looked impressed. Meanwhile, Ha-yeon's smile disappeared instantly. Jian stared at the professor speechlessly. There must be a mistake. The professor adjusted his glasses calmly. No mistake. Then he continued reading. Seo Jun-ho, Park Tae-yang, Lee Hyun-seok. The room exploded. The four kings, and Yu Jian, one team. Whispers filled the classroom immediately. This is insane. Why her? She doesn't belong there. Hyeon should have been chosen. Jian walked the floor to open beneath her. Meanwhile, Tae-Jun sat near the window, quietly watching her reaction. Completely calm, as if this changed nothing for him. The professor ignored the whispers. Your task is simple. He placed folders onto the front desk. Create a short film capable of reaching 1 million views online. The entire class gasped. 1 million views? This wasn't just a school project anymore. This was practically career-changing. Then the professor smiled slightly. And your teammates will determine whether you succeed or completely embarrass yourself. Students instantly became competitive. Phones came out. People began discussing strategies immediately, but Jian couldn't even focus, because she could already feel Hyeon staring at her from across the room. Cold, silent, furious. Then suddenly, a chair moved beside Jian. She froze. Tae-Jun had walked over calmly, one hand inside pocket. The entire room watched him. He placed the competition folder gently onto her desk, then said quietly, "Looks like you're stuck with us now." And somehow, that sentence made the entire classroom even louder than before. The 1 million view projects. The moment their team meetings started, everything went wrong. The media hall became noisy the second class ended. Students immediately gathered with their teams. Laptops opened. Ideas started flying everywhere. Excited conversations filled the room. But one corner remained unusually quiet. Yu Jian sat stiffly at her desk, holding the competition folder carefully. Across from her, the four kings, and somehow, that felt more stressful than the competition itself. Seo Jun-ho broke the silence first. So, who actually knows how to make films? Nobody answered immediately. Park Tae-yang lazily spun a pen between his fingers. Hyun-seok opened his laptop calmly. Meanwhile, Tae-Jun sat quietly beside the window again, relaxed, unreadable. Jian avoided looking at him completely. Jun-ho laughed softly. Great. We're already failing. Tae-yang smirked. At least we'll fail beautifully. Even Hyun-seok smiled slightly at that. Jian blinked slowly. This was strange. She expected arrogant rich students. Not this. Then suddenly, another group across the classroom became louder. Hyeon's team. Students crowded around them, confidently discussing expensive filming equipment and social media strategies. Hyeon glanced briefly toward Jian's group, then smiled slightly. The kind of smile that didn't feel friendly at all. Jian immediately lowered her eyes again, but Jun-ho noticed. Ignore her. Jian looked surprised. Jun, who leaned against the desk casually. Haeyeon hates losing attention, Tae-Yang added calmly. Especially Tae-Jun's attention. The room became awkwardly silent. Jian nearly stopped breathing. Meanwhile, Tae-Jun remained completely calm, as if they hadn't just said something shocking. Hyun-Sok adjusted his glasses quietly. We should focus on the project.
Finally, the most brilliant student among spoke, a normal person. Jian almost looked relieved. Hyun-Seok opened a presentation file on his laptop. The competition is based on online engagement. Students nearby immediately listened carefully. Even Tae-Jun finally looked interested. Hanseong continued calmly. Emotional storytelling spreads fastest online. Junho pointed toward Jian immediately. Perfect. She already looks like a drama main character. Jian's eyes widened instantly. There'll be what? Tae-Yang burst out laughing loudly. Even Tae-Jun's lips curved slightly. Jian looked completely embarrassed now. Junho grinned proudly. See, natural reactions. Jian quickly hid part of her face with the folder. Meanwhile, Tae-Jun quietly watched her again, and Jian noticed. Unfortunately, their eyes met for 2 seconds. That was enough. Her heartbeat immediately became unstable again. She quickly looked away, but Junho noticed everything. Oh yeah, hey. Jian nearly panicked. Stop saying weird things. Tae-Yang laughed harder. Even Hyun-Seok looked amused now. For the first time since joining Hanseong University, Jian accidentally laughed too. A small laugh, very quick. But the table suddenly became quiet afterward, because everyone noticed it, especially Tae-Jun. He stared at her quietly for a moment, then said softly, "You should smile more often." Jian froze instantly. And across the classroom, Haeyeon watched the entire thing happen, her expression slowly becoming colder. The entire university froze when Jian walked into class wearing Tae-Jun's hoodie. Rain poured heavily across Hanseong University that morning. Students rushed through campus holding umbrellas, while cold wind swept across the walkways. Inside the media hall, everyone was already discussing the competition project. Laptops covered the desks. Storyboards filled the digital screens. Haeyeon's team looked especially confident today. Meanwhile, Jian was late. Very late. Junho glanced toward the classroom door dramatically. Either she disappeared. He checked his phone. Or she finally escaped this chaotic team. Tae-Yang laughed softly while spinning a marker. Even Hyun-Seok smiled slightly, but Tae-Jun remained unusually quiet today. His eyes occasionally drifting toward the door. Then suddenly, the classroom door opened, and Jian entered. Completely soaked from the rain, small droplets clung to her dark hair. Her oversized hoodie sleeves covered part of her hands, while she held her bag awkwardly. The classroom slowly became silent, because the hoodie she wore did not belong to her. It was black, luxury branded, and extremely recognizable. Seo Junho nearly stood up immediately. Wait. Tae-Yang blinked twice. Hyun-Seok slowly removed his glasses in disbelief. Even Haeyeon froze completely. Because everyone on campus knew one thing. Kang Tae-Jun only wore custom luxury hoodies. And Jian was wearing one right now. Jian noticed the silence instantly. Her nervous eyes moved around the room slowly. Confused. Her nervous eyes moved around the room slowly. Confused. They'll do what? Nobody answered immediately. Then Junho pointed dramatically toward Tae-Jun. Why are you wearing his hoodie? Jian nearly stopped breathing. Her face immediately turned red. I can explain. Tae-Jun calmly looked away from his laptop, completely relaxed, as if nothing strange was happening, which somehow made everything worse. The classroom exploded into whispers instantly. Did she sleep over? No way. How did she even get that hoodie? Hayeon's expression became colder every second. Jian panicked immediately. It's not what you think. Junho leaned forward excitedly, then explained. Jian hesitated awkwardly before speaking. Yesterday, after the team meeting, the room became quieter again. It started raining really heavily. Flashback. Jian stood alone outside a convenience store near campus the previous night. No umbrella, no taxi. Cold rain falling endlessly. Students rushed past her without stopping. Then suddenly, a black umbrella appeared above her head. Jian looked up slowly. Tae-Jun stood beside her quietly, one hand holding the umbrella, the other inside his pocket. Rain falling softly around him. You're going to get sick. Jian blinked in surprise. I'm okay. Tae-Jun looked at her soaked cardigan silently for 2 seconds, then removed his hoodie calmly and placed it over her shoulders. Jian froze completely. Dobby, wait. Wear it. Back to present. The entire classroom screamed at once. Junho collapsed dramatically onto the desk. Tae-Yang covered his mouth laughing. Even Hanseong looked shocked now. Meanwhile, Hayeon stared at Jian with unreadable eyes. Jian wanted to disappear immediately. I was going to return it today. Then suddenly, Tae-Jun finally spoke. Calm, quiet, dangerously smooth. You can keep it longer. The classroom lost their minds. Jian's face appeared on the giant campus screen, and the entire university stopped walking. 3 days before the competition deadline, every team at Hanseong University was under pressure. The media hall barely slept anymore. Students edited videos overnight. Arguments broke out everywhere. Energy drinks covered every desk. Even the professors looked exhausted. But Team 4 Kings? They still had one massive problem. No main character. Hanseong stood beside the digital screen, while reviewing concepts calmly. Our story needs emotion. Junho immediately pointed toward Jian again. We already found the emotion. Jian nearly dropped her tablet. Why do is every conversation in the way it me? Tae-Yang laughed loudly. Even Tae-Jun looked amused this time. But Hanseong suddenly became serious. Actually, he's right. The room slowly became quiet. Jian blinked nervously. Dori what? Hanseong turned his laptop toward the group. On the screen, a short test clip. Jian during the rain scene yesterday. United, natural, quiet, beautiful. The entire table became silent. Because somehow, she looked like the main character of an actual drama. Jian immediately shook her head. No. Absolutely not. Junho leaned forward dramatically. Too late. The camera already loves you. No. Yes. No. Why yes. Tae-Yang nearly fell off his chair laughing. Meanwhile, Tae-Jun quietly watched Jian panic again. And for some reason, he looked calmer whenever she was around. Hanseong spoke seriously. This competition is based on emotional engagement. He paused briefly. People connect to authenticity. Then he looked directly at Jian. And you feel real. Jian froze slightly. Nobody had ever described her like that before. Not at her old school. Not anywhere. The room became quieter. Then suddenly, Hayeon's voice interrupted from nearby. Interesting. Everyone turned. Hayeon stood beside her team confidently with crossed arms. elegant, perfect, dangerously calm. So your entire project depends on a girl who can barely speak in class. The atmosphere immediately changed. Jian lowered her eyes instantly. But before she could say anything, Tae-Jun stood up. The entire room became silent. Because Kang Tae-Jun almost never involved himself in arguments, he walked calmly toward Hae-yeon, hands inside pockets. Relaxed expression, but his eyes looked cold, very cold. He stopped directly in front of her. Say what you want about the project. The media hall became completely silent now. Then Tae-Jun spoke again, softly. But don't talk about her. Even Hae-yeon looked shocked. Jian stopped breathing completely, and unfortunately, several students secretly recorded everything. 20 minutes later, a clip titled, Kang Tae-Jun Defends a Gyral, started spreading across the university's student page. By evening, the video already had over 20만 views. And Jian's life at Hanseong University was about to change forever. Jian walked into school the next morning, and students started taking pictures of her. The moment Jian stepped through the university gates, she knew something was wrong. Students kept staring, whispering, turning back to look at her again. At first, she thought maybe she imagined it, until, flash, a camera sound. Jian turned immediately. Two girls quickly lowered their phones awkwardly. Sorry. Her eyes widened. Another notification exploded on her phone. Then another, and another. Her hands tightened around the device nervously. The university student page was completely flooded. She's actually pretty. Kang Tae-Jun defended her. Main character energy. Who is she? Jian's breathing became uneven instantly. This was too much. Way too much. Meanwhile, inside the media hall, Junho slammed his hands dramatically onto the desk. She's viral. Tae-Yang nearly choked on his drink laughing. Hanseong calmly pushed his glasses upward. The clip reached 80만 views overnight. Even Tae-Jun finally looked surprised. Junho pointed accusingly toward him. This is your fault. Tae-Jun leaned back calmly. I didn't upload it. Your face uploaded it. Tae-Yang burst out laughing loudly again. Then suddenly, the classroom door opened. Jian entered quietly. The entire room instantly became silent. Several students immediately looked away, pretending not to stare. Others secretly checked their phones again. Jian froze awkwardly near the entrance, completely overwhelmed. Suddenly stood up dramatically. Our celebrity has arrived. Stop saying that. Her face immediately turned red. Even Tae-Jun smiled slightly this time, which only made everything worse. Jian quickly sat beside the group while covering part of her face, but then a female student approached their table nervously. Jian looked up slowly. The girl smiled awkwardly. Your rain clip was really beautiful. Jian blinked in surprise. Another student approached too. Then another. Suddenly, several students surrounded the table, complimenting her, asking questions, praising the video. Jian looked completely unprepared for this kind of attention. Meanwhile, across the room, Hae-yeon watched everything silently, her expression slowly hardening, because for the first time in years, she was no longer the center of attention at Hanseong University, and she hated it. Then suddenly, one student spoke excitedly. You should act in the final competition video. The entire table became quiet again. Ji-an immediately shook her head. No, no way. But Junho leaned forward instantly. Actually, Hyun-seok nodded slowly. Tae-Yang grinned, and finally, Tae-Jun looked directly at her. Do it. Jian stared at all four of them in disbelief, because somehow, the four kings had already made their decision. And she was definitely not escaping it anymore. Jian smiled calmly toward Jian. Try not to freeze on camera. Jian's confidence immediately dropped again. But before Hyeon could continue, Tae-Jun stepped beside Jian quietly, close enough for everyone to notice. She'll do fine. The atmosphere instantly changed again. Several students whispered loudly nearby. Again, Hyeon's smile almost cracked for the first time. Then, filming started, and stood in the center of the university courtyard, while cameras focused directly on her. Her hands trembled slightly around the script. Junho gave her a thumbs up supportively. Tae-Yang controlled the moving camera. Hyun-seok monitored the scene beside the director's screen, and Tae-Jun stood nearby silently watching her. Jian inhaled nervously. Then, action. Everything disappeared from her mind. Completely blank. Jian froze. The entire filming area became awkwardly silent. Several students started whispering immediately. Jian's breathing became uneven. Her hands tightened around the script shakily. Then suddenly Hyeon laughed softly nearby. Not loudly, but enough. Jian to hear it, and somehow, that made everything worse. Jian lowered her head immediately in embarrassment. But then Tae-Jun walked directly into the filming area, in front of everyone, ignoring the cameras completely. He stopped directly beside Jian. Quietly took the script from her trembling hands. The entire set became silent. Tae-Jun looked at her calmly. Forget the script. Jian blinked nervously. Will we what? He stepped slightly closer. Just talk to me. And somehow, that made her heart beat even harder than the cameras did.
The director couldn't believe it. Keep rolling, he whispered. Nobody dared stop filming. Junho stared at the monitor with his mouth open. Taeyong forgot he was supposed to move the camera. Hyun-seok pushed his glasses up slowly. Even he looked shocked. Then came the final scene, the most emotional moment in the script. A scene everyone thought would take several attempts. The director shouted action. Jian closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something felt different. She delivered. She delivered the scene flawlessly. Every word landed perfectly. Every emotion felt real. By the time she finished, the entire filming set was silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For 3 long seconds, all anyone could do was stare. Then, the director jumped out of his chair. That was perfect. The courtyard exploded. Students cheered. Crew members clapped. Even professors applauded. Jian stood frozen. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Junho ran over first. I knew it, Taeyong.
Taeyong laughed. No, you didn't. I absolutely did. No, you didn't. Meanwhile, Hyun-seok was already reviewing the footage. His eyes widened. This might actually win. The 4 kings looked at each other. For the first time since the competition started, they all thought the same thing. They weren't just competing anymore. They were favorites to win. Across the courtyard, Hyeon watched the celebration in silence. Her smile was gone. For the first time in years, she felt something.
Because Jian wasn't supposed to become the star, she wasn't supposed to become the face of the competition, and she definitely wasn't supposed to have Tae-Jun standing beside her. But now she had all 3. As the crowd surrounded Jian, Hyeon quietly walked away and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number. The call connected immediately. A slow smile appeared on her face. Looks like we'll have to do this another way.
The entire university stood on its feet for Jian, and the one person who once wanted her gone couldn't stop crying. The day of the final competition had arrived. Students packed every seat in the auditorium. Professors filled the front rows. Industry judges sat behind long tables. The biggest event of the year was about to begin. And for the first time since entering Hanseong University, Jian wasn't hiding in the back. She was standing on the main stage. The same girl nobody noticed months ago. The same girl who used to eat lunch alone. The same girl who was terrified of speaking in front of a classroom. The entire university was waiting to hear her speak. Backstage, the four kings stood beside her. Junho looked nervous for the first time in his life. Tae-Yang kept pacing. Seok checked the presentation one final time. Even Tae-Jun looked unusually serious. Jian smiled. Then she laughed. The boys stared at her. What? Jian shook her head. It's funny. What is? She looked at all four of them. A few months ago, I would have run away by now. The group laughed. Then the announcer called their team. It was time. The lights dimmed. The presentation began. The audience watched in complete silence. Every scene they had filmed appeared on the giant screen. The laughter, struggles, the friendships, the journey, and at the center of it all was Ji-Yan. Not acting, just being herself. Final video ended. Silence filled the auditorium.
The auditorium became completely silent. Jian smiled softly. Then she said something nobody expected. She said the biggest thing she learned wasn't how to speak in front of people, it wasn't how to make friends, it wasn't even how to believe in herself, it was learning that everyone was scared of something, even the people who looked perfect, even the people everyone admired, even the people she once envied. She looked toward the four kings, then toward the audience, and finally toward Ha-Yun. She thanked every person who helped her grow, even the ones who made her stronger by challenging her. Ha-Yun's eyes immediately filled with tears. For the first time, there was no jealousy, no rivalry, no competition, just regret. Jian finished by saying something that nobody would ever forget. She said, "You don't need to become someone else to shine. Sometimes the person you've been hiding is already enough." The auditorium exploded. Students jumped to their feet. Professors applauded. Because even the judges stood, the standing ovation seemed endless. Jian froze. Not from fear, from disbelief. The invisible girl had become the most admired person in the room. Then came the announcement. The host opened the envelope. Everyone held their breath. The winner of the Hanseong University Grand Competition was Team Four Kings. The auditorium erupted again. Junho screamed. Tae-Young nearly tackled him. Hyun-suk actually smiled, a rare event that shocked everyone. Jian laughed so hard she started crying. Then she noticed Tae-Jun standing quietly beside her. Everyone else was celebrating, but he was only looking at her. The noise around them seemed to disappear. Tae-Jun smiled, a real smile, the kind nobody ever saw. Then he said, "Remember the first day we met?" Jian nodded. "You looked terrified." She laughed. "I was terrified." Tae-Jun shook his head. "No." Jian looked confused. Tae-Jun smiled again. "You were brave." For a moment neither of them spoke. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something. It was the first competition name tag Jian had received, the one she nearly threw away, the one that started everything. Tae-Jun handed it back to her. "Keep it." "Why?" "Because one day you'll forget how far you've come." Jian stared at him, then suddenly laughed through her tears. Around them, students celebrated, cameras flashed, friends cheered, the future waited. But in that moment none of it mattered. Because the girl who once believed nobody saw her had finally discovered the truth. She had never been invisible, she just needed to see herself.